Hello folks, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I posted my last video. So in this video we're going to cover a lot of ground. First I'm going to talk a little bit about a book that I've written recently. This book was published on Amazon. It's also available in India. The name of the book is India, A Reckoning with History. So I have the book here, so you can take a look at it. And if you have a chance, if you want to order it online, and I have my picture on the back. Okay, very nice picture. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about this book. What is this book about and why I bothered to write it? It was a lot of effort to write a book. Those of you who have written a book, you know how hard it is to write a book. So the idea to write this book had been germinating in my mind for about 10 years. It was suggested by my brother. His name is Bablu, and about 10 years ago he suggested I should write a book about the history of India and introduce it in easy to understand language to people. India has a very fascinating history going back thousands of years. I focused on the last 2000 years of Indian history, and so why I bothered to write this book? Well, the purpose of this, there are many reasons why I wrote this. The main purpose is, of course, like I said, is to introduce India's history. See what's going on in India right now. India is going through a very interesting point in her stage, in the stage of her history, and many things are going on. Many young people are becoming interested in Indian history. They want to understand why India has faced so many problems over the last 1000 years. The foreign invasions and the damage these foreigners did to India, and they're proud of their heritage. They should be. So I am also proud of being an Indian, even though I've lived in America for more than 30 years. So this was all basically was at the back of my head to explain how India's history has unfolded, because if you want to understand your present, you have to understand your history first. So this is what history does. One could say what purpose history serves. The most important purpose history serves is it enables you to understand what has happened before, so you can understand how you got here and why you got at this point in time. So that's one of the, of course, the other reason why anybody would bother to read history is it's interesting. It's a very interesting subject. Professionally, I'm not a historian. I'm an amateur historian. Professionally, I'm a microchip design engineer and a physicist, but I am also interested in history, especially the Buddhist history of India. So that's the second most important point why I wanted to write this book, is to introduce people to this concept. And I'm sure most of you have heard of this concept called India was a golden bird, or in Hindi they say India Bharat ek sone ki chidiya thi. So this is what I wanted to explain, why India was called. India indeed was a golden bird, there is no doubt about that, but why was it, and how it became a golden bird, and unfortunately, sadly, what happened to it? Where did that golden bird go? So all this is explained in this book. It's a sweeping look at India's history, and I have not pulled any punches, which means that I have said things in my book which might offend some people. People might think that I'm attacking some people, a group of people, but that's not my intention. See, when you write history, you have to be completely honest and impartial. You cannot pick sides. You cannot pick and choose what you're going to write and what you're going to leave out. So if you're looking back history of a great nation over such a long period of time, then you have to be very honest. What exactly has happened, how it happened, who were the main actors, and what were the consequences of their actions. So this is what this video is. I would like to talk about Buddhism and how Buddhism came to be and how it spread through India and to the rest of the world, and finally my personal relationship with Buddhism. I am a Buddhist. I identify myself as a Buddhist. I was born as a Hindu, but now I identify myself as a Buddhist. Okay, so let's start where Buddhism came from. Buddhism arose in northeast India. All the places are in Bihar state in India now. So that's where Buddha went after he left his home when he was a young man of 29 years old, and he left his home in search of wisdom because he was not happy with what he saw around himself. He saw a lot of unhappiness. He saw death and suffering and disease. So he wanted to get to the root of things, why there is suffering in this. This is the question Buddha set for himself. What is the cause of suffering in the world? So eventually he arrived in a place which is now known as Bodh Gaya, and that's where he was enlightened, sitting under a Bodhi tree. And the tree is still there after 2,500 years. Not the same tree, but the place is the same. Anyway, so what Buddhism is about, it's a set of rules that allows you to understand the world around you and your position or your place in it. Okay, so there are some just a few rules, and these are very simple rules, and so they are given this name called Fourfold Way, which basically stands for there is suffering in the world, there is a cause of suffering, there is elimination of suffering, and then there's the Eightfold Way, which is the way you get over suffering. So these Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Way, these are the integral parts of Buddhism. Now, Buddhism arose in India in a certain context of social conditions that were prevalent in India in those days. So it arose as a reaction against the Brahmin domination of Indian society or Hindu society. And even 2,500 years ago, the society was becoming quite ritualistic. There were lots of rituals and religious rituals, and there were many rituals which involved violence against animals, and of course on top of all this there was the Brahmin domination of the society. So people, and at that time 2,500 years ago, the first cities along the Ganga Valley were coming into existence, and Banaras was the biggest and the first one of those. And so people, for the first time since the decline of Indus Valley civilization, were now moving into cities. Before that, for more than 1,000 years, Indians had lived in villages, but now these cities were coming into existence. And in the cities, people of all backgrounds, all castes, were thrown together. And these people were especially unhappy with the way things were, the excessive amount of rituals that had crept into the faith and the Brahmin domination of the faith. So they were looking for something new, something different. So Buddha arrived just at the right moment. According to historians, Buddha arrived in Banaras just 50 or 60 years after Banaras was established in 6th century BC. So Buddha's philosophy made tremendous impact on Indian society. It hit Indian society like a tsunami, and it swept everything in front of it, just like a tsunami does. Because what Buddha talked about was so radical, was so different from anything that people had heard before. So first of all, Buddha said, you can forget about God. There is no God. You can forget about the next world. You can forget about heaven or heaven or hell. This is the world. This is the only world you have. This is the only world you'll ever have. And your actions are going to determine what you do in this world. So you're responsible whatever happens to you. Nobody else can be held responsible for what happens to you or your life. You are the captain and the navigator of your life. So you have to control and the way you live this life. So how you're supposed to live your life, that's where the Four Noble Truths come in, and the Eightfold Way comes in. That you have to decide what's the right way to live, what's the right way to act, what's the right way to speak, and how to focus your mind. So the purpose of all this is to train the mind so the mind can be stilled, and the eventual aim is enlightenment, what Buddhists call nirvana in Sanskrit. But enlightenment, of course, it's a very, very subtle and extremely difficult state to reach. But that's the ultimate aim of all Buddhists. But of course, hardly anybody would ever reach there. We don't think anybody has reached nirvana since Buddha. But anyway, so nirvana is a state of mind, it's the highest state of mind. There is nothing supernatural about it. So this is what we have to understand. Buddha was not a god, he was a teacher. He called himself a teacher. He never called himself a god or a son of God or a prophet of God. He was just a teacher who was just a common man, and by following a certain path he was able to reach this unique state of mind, this enlightened state of mind, which is known as nirvana. And he basically left behind a guide map, so to speak, where anybody can follow the same set of rules that he himself followed and try to reach that stage.